All right, what's happening in this Maamar? So first of all, I think at this stage, pretty much you could already say with a certain certainty that you could see what the Hemshich of Tafshin Tazayin is all about. Yeah, pretty much we're going into the same themes every Maamar. Which themes come up in every Maamar?
I mean, we'll talk about Foundation's Bara with its own, also its own.
Right, but even there, some of them, a big part of I went to other Yonim, you always, from Rosh Hashanah, you already see this. Right, there's the Avodah Mitzad HaMoichin and the Avodah Rosa de Liba. Right? Many of them are the bittul that the Moichin is poil in the Midas, the bittul Mitzad HaChachma, a lot of these terms that in the different Maamarim comes to from many different angles. But you see it here. The emes is that you go back, you see in Tezvav, in the end, in the summer of Tezvav, already the Rebbe Shtar goes into the sugya of Moichin and Midas. And I'm going to bring a bit from there, because it's negate to what's happening here in this Maamar. Right, and Be'etzem, this is something that you see in Chassidus Bechlal, Chassidus Mont Avodas HaMoichin, Moich Shalat Al Lev, and learning Chassidus, and taking Moichin and being poil on the person. It's Sheni, the same Chassidus is the biggest mezalzel in Moichin, yeah? It's like Moichin, Siras Nefesh, Yechidish of Nefesh. Right, and there's always those two inyanim. There's limud, there's using your seichel. But then there's, while you're doing that, recognizing as be'etzem sigar hecher from seichel. We're talking about something that's l'mayla min seichel in ganze. But it has to be both. Now, what's the place of both? When does each one come? When do we focus on each one? So you'll have all kinds of tracks and all kinds of ifan, the way it's been born in the Maamar and Sichas. In this Maamar, he gives a very geshmak mahalach. What's the mahalach? You went through the whole Maamar, part of the Maamar, half the Maamar? First of all, the very geshmak Maamar about what? About Negelwasser. Yeah, you probably haven't seen that before. It's probably a first for many people.
Didn't see that coming.
You didn't see that coming.
I thought that was like just a little bit of like you know,
it's like the TV.
Like it doesn't flow, and then boom,
Negelwasser. Like, oh, that's where we're going. That's what's happening here. Very good. There's something you get up release time, your camp release time. Teach kids about Negelwasser. Now you have some chassidus to infiltrate through Negelwasser. You could teach them some chassidus. I think it's not the morning Negelwasser. So it's before you give them the snack, whatever it is. By thank you Hashem for kosher pizza. Stomach with a few slices. Darshan vash in the hand. Right, so there's a lot of oisias, there's a lot of interesting in this Kabbalah, and there's Negelwasser and Yanim, but what's happening here is, so basically, we start off from the Avodah in the Mikdash, right? In Chassidus, the Avodah of the Mikdash is the prototype of what Avodah Sa'adam is. Vasuli Mikdash v'shachanti b'soicham b'soich kol echad v'echad. That's better than the Avodah sheb'chol echad, to make a Mikdash. And all the Avodas in the Mikdash, people came to the temple, what do they see? Sacrifices, and lighting candelabras, and alagut inyan, right? We understand that this is all, it's all a skalos of something much deeper. And so the two avodas, he speaks of many different avodas. Here in general, what are the two big avodas of Hamikdash that we go through over here in the Maamar? Avodas ha-menorah, alokas ha-neiros, and aktaras ha-kteres. Right, the Chlal in Chassidus, a lot more Maamar speaks about Akravas HaKarbonis and Keteiris. A lot of Sukkot Maamar, you'll remember it. And look at, you have a lot of those. Kiruv and Keteiris is Kesher. Keteiris is a higher Kesher. Or low, different dargis. Here we see Lokas Neiris and Keteiris. Though at the end he says, Skalos, everything has everything, but those are the two Mahalchim. One Inyan is, in Nefesh Adam, what are these two Avodas? So the first avodah is how to be mashpia on your midas, how to work with your midas. A person there's midas and nefesh likis, there's midas and nefesh bahamis. So there could be midas rois. So your midas fall into all kinds of narishkeit, or not even. It's just not sophisticated. It's not getlicha midas. Right? A person could be a good person, but they enjoy taivaset. They enjoy their inyan. Their midas are not lahabaya. Okay, so how do we deal with midas? This is from the Yesoidis of Chassidus, Tanya. Moich Shalt Aleh. Right from the beginning of Tanya. Perigimel. There's Moichin, there's Midas. And if you sichla yehol alish, the moichin or shalit alev, and teva adam mitildase in Perek Yud Beis. Every person is moich shalit alev, and that's the general mahalach of Chassidus. Use your moichin to affect your midas, right? Because there's many different mahalachim in Yiddishkeit, right? That's a whole idea of midas. Chassidus chagas, they kocht in midas, and Chabad kochts in what?
Chabad.
In Chabad, but it's not so pashut. Be'etzem, all Talmidei HaMagid agreed, and this was the Teres of Magid and Teres of Shem Tov, the Avodah is that a person's midos should be aligned with Alikus. The Shaila is, how do you deal with the Chagas? Right, in a way, we're also Chagasnikim, at the core. Because that's the Avodah. The Avodah is Adam Eitz Asada. Who's a human being? What makes a person human? Their feelings, their emotions. We're emotional creatures. We use moichin, but we're an emotional people. As he says in the Maamar, ultimately to affect your day to day, it will have to go through your midas. Because we act and we react to things according to our midas. Right? A person's in a certain. How do you see the world, and how do you and what motivates you to do things? When you have good feelings for it. That's what makes you do something. When you don't have good feelings for something, when you're scared of something, when you're worried about something, you're triggered by something, you go in the other direction. So midas ultimately are what puts us on a certain path. The question is, what do you do with those midas? So Chagas comes and says, straight into midas, and do all kinds of to be moira the midas, clap, jump, whatever, to do whatever. That's obviously a very shallow interpretation of Chagas, but in other words, go straight to the midas, be moira the midas. Chabad comes and says, you want to reach the midas, has to go through moichin. Moyach shalat alalev. Moyach is, and that's where you make the real shinui in midas. And if it doesn't come through moichin, then it's not real. And it's the Alter Rebbe's famous answer to the chassid, that he had a friend that was a chassid of Chai Kolam Dur, and the Lubavitcher, the Chabadnik then, it wasn't Lubavitcher, wasn't it? Saw his friend, was davening such a slavos, he gave the Alter Rebbe, ich bin a chassid from Alter Rebbe, and I don't have such a slavos. Alter Rebbe said, davent, Chaikel davent in him, durchem. Exact lashon is, right? Meaning he's on fire, but it's just someone triggering his, waking up his midas. But it's not internalized, which internalize it in the midas has to come through the moich. Fine. So the moich shalat alalev. That's avodas. What? Hadlokas aneris. How is hadlokas aneris moichin being shalat alalev, poil alalev? What's the connection? So interesting way he is here, yeah, that what? That your mamshich the oira chachma, the shemin, in the midos, which is the neiris. Right? Okay. Then there's avodah number 2. What's avodah number 2? Right, so the first half of the Maamar, which Abbtzon goes through many different inyanim, and it goes through right, so it's in Kabbalah, Netilas Yadayim L'Suda, and Netilas Yadayim. The Yadayim are the midis, and pouring water. Water is pshittis. Pshittis is chachmar, even higher shemavai. Okay, then comes Sifhei, page 49. Omnam calls Obinina midis. For midas, all you got to get to is moichin. In moichin itself, the chachma, we'll get back to that soon. But then when you're dealing with oisius of machshava dibur ma'isa, moichin won't work. Because even when you're moyach shalat ala lev, you're in trouble. This is very interesting. You don't see these oisius a lot. Because usually the sprach is, okay, moyach shalat ala lev, and lev is what right makes everything function, and your machshava your ma'isa follow your midas. So get your midas intact, in line, and then everything will follow. And taka works that way. Once your midas are proper, then your machshava your ma'isa will be kedaboy. What's the problem? The problem is that there's life, and life is real. What do I mean by real? What you do has consequences. So if right now a person decides at the age of 20, age of 25, 30, 50, whatever it is, okay, I'm being a Chassidish Yid, and I'm doing tshuva, and whatever happened till now happened. But now, okay, so now I'm going to get my mind into the right place. I'll have the right ideas, and these ideas are going to influence my midas. I'm going to have positive midos towards Elikos, Chassidishkeit. Over Mela, it's going to be poil on machshava d'ramaisa. The problem is that you had many machshavos, diburim, and maisim in the past few years of your life, and those machshavos and diburim and maisim don't run away. It doesn't disappear. Because if you had certain ideas in your head, if a person saw certain things that Chayri shouldn't have seen, so he can learn Chassidus, and he can learn Chassidus be'iyun u'b'shefa, but he's still the same human being. And if I saw something or I thought of something before, they still pop up. It's like these, on the screen, a pop up just comes out of nowhere. So here, Taka, your midas, even if a person, and you see this, even if a person is in a very good mood and very excited, and or anything in life, right? You're in a certain, you mamish want to, you're very close to somebody, so there's very good midas for that person. But all of a sudden, if let's say there's somebody, this person did something to me many, many years ago, and hurt me. So even if right now we're very good, it could all of a sudden hit me a memory of what happened a long time ago, and that could affect me. So over here, machshava d'ramaisa, these things could come back, and my machshava d'ramaisa, unwillingly, I'll just have certain machshavas, certain oisias return to me, and it could express itself in maisa, etc. So what do you do for that? For that, it's not enough moichin. For that, what do you need? So it's interesting. It starts. The Rebbe brings the pasuk Choymas Bastien Eridi Kenachal Dima, right? And in many Maamarim in Chassidus, this is brought to the Indian of Demois, Meriros, the concept of Meriros. That's why Meriros comes in. In Chassidus, in many Maamarim, it speaks about the mile of Meriros. The Meriros reaches very, very high places, higher than where Aveidas HaMoichin can reach, Aveidas HaMidus, Simcha, etc., etc. Meriros reaches very, very high places. It's a very dangerous place to enter, but it reaches very, very high. And Meriros is Mo'ir from Etzem HaNefesh, and it brings a person to a place that it could change even their machshavis, diburim, and maisim, and could actually bring it out. And as you see, right, you see when a person, it's today would be called very therapeutic, right? Or in English, it's called catharsis. You know what catharsis is? Yeah. A person goes through a very tough experience, and they cry, so it releases all the energy, right? They're able to get over. A person, you saw here's my story last week. It was last week or 2 weeks ago. So the Rebbe Pasha wanted him to let it all out in Yechidus. What was the story? His father was hit by a car, right? It was, well, you saw the story. Where did it come out? Right, he was trying just to move on, and the Rebbe wanted him to put it all out on the table. I heard from a chaver. His father came from, his grandmother came out of Russia, and she came into the Rebbe and started speaking different inyanim. And the Rebbe said, "Dafti tish." I have to ask him the lashon. If something like dafti tish, all peklach are put out on this tish. Put it all out and leave it here. And this is where you could leave it. Right. So there's an akudah that the Demois and the Meriros takes out all that negative energy. And then a person's able sort of to get past as if and move on from that experience, and those oisias don't come back to them. Right? When a person has intrusive thoughts, these ideas that tend to come back because of the experience of many, many years ago, you go through a process of cleansing of Meriros. The Meriros is able to remove that, to take that away. But the way the Rebbe translates it here in the Maamar, the Rebbe doesn't go to the place of Meriros. We know Bechlal that the Rebbe, even though the Chassidus read Ba'afla, the Ma'il is Meriros, but the Rebbe gesagt, it was on one of these weeks, Yishlach, Memvav, Nistaim Aveidas Meriros. Whatever that exactly means. I'm not going to get into the whole sort of bringing of its own, but access to Etzem HaNefesh. What's the access to Etzem HaNefesh? Rusa Deliba. The Avodah of Rusa Deliba. Okay, so let's back up a second. So before we get to this Rusa Deliba, so first the Moyach Shalat al Lev. What what's the moich shalt al lev? So that's sich barich is about the oyer chachma. Right? It's not stam moich shalt al lev. It's the oyer chachma that's poil on the midas. Right? First, it's oyer chachma. The pshitas of oyer chachma. That's like the mayim that has a gov and lovim that doesn't have any color. And then even nachecher. Where's the nachecher? It's in dollar somewhere. Yeah. Shemavaya. Yeah, on the top of the 48, there's not just Eir Chachma, it's the Shem Avayed. And on top of 49, Eir Shem Avayed, Lamata Yisir wa Eir de Chachma. And the bittul of Chachma nasa bittul gamba midis. The point here is Chachma. Where does Chachma come in? Why dafke Chachma? Especially, we know it says in Chassidus that Moichin and Midis are very far from each other. Moichin are cold, Midis are varim. Moichin are objective, Midis are subjective. Where do they meet? So Chassidus says that there's Moichin, then there's Midis shebe Moichin, right? Moichin shebe Midis, and Midis. Right? That's how the Ishtalshlus happens. Right? In other words, that the Moichin has to be mislabish in the Midis, because Moichin speaks in the world of abstract. Like, okay, this is Moichin just like, okay, thinks about the idea, Malik Kalam, Sev Kalam, Kluk Miklach Shiv. Right, pretty cool. We're not even, because that's already Midish and Moichin, right? So there's an idea. Then Moichin has to come and say, and has to have a spilus HaMoichin. And Moichin already is like, wow, this is awesome stuff. This is pretty cool in Yanim. Then Moichin comes and says, this is good. Now, he doesn't say it's good for me, because there is no me in the world of Moichin. It's not real Moichin if there's me. So there's Kirvas Alikim Toiv. Then from Kirvas Alikim Toiv, it's installed to Kirvas Alikim Li Toiv, which is already in the world of Midas. Midas. So there's sort of this process of Moichin being a slavish in Midas. That's the process of Ilo Va'olol versus other, let's say from Ratzin to Seichel, which is Derech Al Yeshmiyayin. Seichel to Midas is the Ilo Va'olol concept. So Ilo Va'olol, it shouldn't be Chachma running the show. It should be Bina running the show. In order to actually change my Midas, what changes a person's Midas? Chachma or Bina? Chachma is when you have the idea in very, very abstract, Baraka Mavrik, right, in the Kudah. So you get the general point. Oh, Geshmak Avart. Yeah. And then the Kudah. But it's not developed, it's not analyzed, it's not broken down, it doesn't fully make sense to you. After Chachma comes Bina. And Bina, only through Bina you reach Das. And Das is Maftecha the Kolol Shis. Das brings you to Midas. So Bina is the one entering the world of Midas. And what's Lashon? Eim Habanim Smecha. Eim is Bina. Habanim, the children of Bina are the Midas. Leia Yolda Shisha Banim, the six kids of Bina. So it's come from Bina. So okay, I could just say more Oisias Kabbalah and Psukim, right? It's not really. The point is, right? The Chayr, it's Bina that does it. Bina and Das that bring about the change in Midas. Why are we focusing here on Chachma? Chachma is the one that does it. So the emes is that this sugya, while in Tanya obviously everything's brought very bekitzer. Said, yeah. So what do we say? Me'ach shalat al lev. Sounds pretty straightforward. But the sugya me'ach shalat al lev is a very, very long, complex, complicated, fascinating sugya. And Chassidus poses a question, which is how can the moichin be shalat al lev? How can moich be shalat al lev? And there's many elements to this question. Chassidus comes from many directions. I'll just bring a few of them. Probably from Maamar, you might have seen different oisias. So first of all, on a very practical space, midis are very, very powerful. Right? Think when something you like, something that you're drawn to, something that a person's attracted to. Everyone, whatever, Taivas, not even Taivas, no. Other people, things, inyanim, personal preferences, hobbies. It's very, very strong. How can moichin come and affect that? Right, moichin is very geschmack, but how many how many times do you see a person? You see people that actually their moichin changed their hobbies and changed their preferences and changed their netiyas, etc. Now, mitzat haskala, the shaila would be like this. Why? Because in the hierarchy of the nefesh, lev is here, mayach is here. So mayach is greater than lev, so mayach is shalat ala lev. But is it really higher than lev? Are the moichin higher than midas? So b'poyel, the moichin, we say chacham midas chesed gvur teferes mayach is higher than midas. But if you look at their energy and at their shoyrish, midas are a lot higher than moichin. In Lashon Kabbalah, it's zabatika ochad b'talya. Midas, and this you see in the fact that midas by a person are very, very strong. Midas don't change. People's midas don't change. Moichin changes. In the world of ideas, we evolve. Ideas that made sense to us, amol, don't make sense to us as we get older, and we change our minds. Especially the more a person is more moichindik, the more open he is to change. The more, especially when you enter the world of bina, you could see everything in a million different ways, right? Midas, what do I mean by midas? You have different people. So you have a isha chesed, you have isha gvura, bishami b'silu. A isha chesed, pretty much no matter what happens to them in life, no matter how old they get, they're going to be isha chesed. Personalities don't change. Right? When you check up on a person, what's a personality? I don't know. Who cares? In 10 years he won't be different. Because this is personality. Personality is midas. When you speak about a person as in a mensch, what makes him a person, human being, when we talk about a human being, we mean the midas. We don't mean the moichin. When a person's born, they're born with midas right away. They have their midas. They have the things that they like, things that they don't like. Moichin develops at a later stage. Some people never develop moichin. Yeah? You have shaitim, you have people that they're not bari seichel. Not everyone's a bari seichel. Everyone's a bal midas. Why? Because midas is who we are. That's what makes a human being. The midas cannot change. Not Chassidus brings Chassidus, which is the number one proponent of changing oneself. And Chassidus will always kach, etc. Says, but we don't really mean actually changing who you are, actually changing your midas. You could change as in, if instead of enjoying ice cream, you could enjoy a sicha and a Maamar Chassidus. But the things or the mahalik that you take, right? A person that has chesed, so chesed could have its nikasachet could go into klipas plishtim, right? That a person just does a certain efkeris. Fine, so take it from that place and take it to a place of simcha d'avodas Hashem. Gvura could go to, in the worst case, could go to a place of ritzicha. Take that gvura and be disciplined, right? And use it as ishpeyesh. So midas are very, very strong. Midas are pretty much set in stone. It defines the person. This person, these are his midas. Why are midas so strong? So chassidus mevar midas are so strong because they're mushrish and etzem nefesh. When a person is born, every person is like you in your most basic core form. You have a personality. Every single person, the neshama has an atzmistic personality that will never change. The Lashon Chassidus is it's mush a shrasha atzmis in etzem nefesh. The etzem nefesh l'chayr is pure, doesn't have any tzir, but there is. I'm not going to get into how it's shaykh, but the reality that every person has a core personality trait. So those are the midas. So on the one hand, we see, and that's why you see when a person's midas are nisoyer, don't get in the way, right? Don't get in the way. The midas are dangerous. Moichin, no matter how a person convinced mitzad moichin, say they're convinced him, he could get convinced otherwise. Unless he's a ish takif, where his midas control his moichin, and he's impossible, you can't rationalize with him.
It's not moichin.
It's not moichin. The kilo, he's rationalizing. He uses moichin, but it's moichin that are misharis the midas. Midas are very, very strong. So the one and midas are so strong. The reason they're so strong is because they're mushush and etzem nefesh. And mitzat sheni lefi sichla yehol alish, and moyach shalat al alev. And the moichin can be manig the midas. The moichin sort of navigate and show the midas where to go. So how? How do moichin have that power? How can moichin be poil on my midas if my midas come from a higher place than the moichin? And you see that b'mhusam, they're much stronger. They have much more energy than moichin ever have. No matter how much a person is a bal moichin, and how in gishmak you could have in moichin and in learning and in ideas, but when your midas are on fire, when your midas are at play, it's a much stronger space.
Context of two nefashos. What are we talking about? What's
You're saying simply in Tanya? You could be mevatel certain midas, change midas. There's different levels. There would be l'shanis midaisav ativim, l'shanis teva midaisav. There's one oifen of changing, let's say, from Ava to Nefsha Bahamis, to Nyonim of Klippa, to Ava Lelikus. That's one level. But then there's a higher level. I have a Simansich in Vedas Hashem. Ata Yadaiti Kireli Kim Ata. Only in the 10th Nisoy in the Ibishah says Ata Yadaiti Kireli Kim, the Malach says. Ata Yadaiti Kireli Kim Ata. Why Ata Yadaiti, the 9 Nisyonis weren't good enough, is Avodah till now? Because until now, everything he did, we could say that it comes from a place. Avram Oyavi. Avram is Oyav Hashem. So his Ava brought him to do all these avodas. No matter how connected you are to the Eibishter and how much you love Hashem, if you're a Isha, a Chesed, there's no way you're picking up your knife on your kid. It's impossible. It's impossible. Avram Avinu, with all his godless, will never pick up a knife on his kid if all he's motivated by is Ava. Because Ava just can't do that. You can't do that to your kid. You're able to change, in a way, almost change your personality. Go against your personality.
That was Shiur, that was just in his Nefesh Hamas versus Nefesh Lekis. If Teva is Nefesh Hamas.
No, even your Nefesh Lekis, your Avala Hashem won't get you to. You have to change your Nefesh Lekis. You have to move out to your Nefesh Lekis. So Vimela. On the one hand, your midas are so strong, and they have a higher shayrish and a higher energy than moichin. Mitzat sheni, the whole Chassidus Chabad is based on the premise that moich shalt alev, and moichin should influence your midas. And if you want to change the way you feel about things, use your brain. So how does this happen? So Chassidus says like this. Take, midas as they are unpenetrable. You can't penetrate. You can't touch them. Something you could do. In other words, you see a guy right now. Biskabrus hamidas, you can't rationalize with them. Yeah, it's almost like you're seeing someone intoxicated and you're trying to explain them something. Yeah, come back tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, it's you can't shade them at them. Right? There's nobody home. A little kid is having a tantrum. There's total midas. There's no moichin involved. Explain to the kid why a tantrum. Yeah, it's a 2-year-old. There's nobody home. It's in shaykh. It's midas. Wait till a tantrum. So midas, the way they are, be skabrus ubetoike. You can't talk to them. Those midas are nobody home. Goodbye, Charlie. When does the conversation with midas happen? When the midas are bechalishus. That's when the conversation happens. Right? Once the tantrum stage is over, okay, let the kid lie down the floor and kick, If you remember a few years ago. Come on, Nishzich, the younger breeder, yeah. A person knows even that right now you're in a bad mood, someone pissed you off. Right? Don't. The way Ad Yavar Zam, right, you see many Igris, Kas. What to do about Kas? There's this point in news that Rebbe brings very often. Yigeres HaKodesh, Meisim Chafei. right? That kol hakoy is kilo v'yizara. Why? Because everything comes from the Eibishter, etc. That's the answer to it. But first, yichake. In a few places, yichake. I think 60 seconds. Wait a few minutes. Wait a few hours. Obviously, depending on the person and the style. First thing is, blow off steam. Right now, your middas are triggered. You can't talk to them. The middas have to be bechalishus. What when the middas are bechalishus? Then even though bisharsha, they come from a higher place, but because they're bechalishus, the shoyresh is not so bigilui, and now they're not coming with all their energy. And mevesach, like in Tanya Perik Chavav, when two people are fighting, it's not about who's stronger; it's who's more motivated and who right now is in a better strategic position. So, even though the middas might be be'etzem stronger, but right now their guard is down, they're more bechalishus. Then the moichin could start rationalizing, talking to the middas, influencing the middas, etc., etc. But the frektzich the kashe say there. But if my middas are biskabros, how do I turn down the energy? How do I turn down the fire and from iskabros bring it to chalishus? What do you do? If the middas are biskabros, how do you turn iskabros into chalishus? You can't tell me the moichin are the ones that do it, because the moichin only work when there's chalishus. As long as the middas are biskabros, the moichin can't penetrate. So you're saying l'cher just wait.
It's natural.
What?
You said it's naturally. You said before they're natural.
Oh, but how does that naturally thing work? What is actually happening? What is that process? The chayr is just like wait, right? But what's really the meaning behind waiting? Or now obviously the person just has a tantrum for a moment. It's einzach. But think about when something's really, really affecting a person, something's really, really bothering you, or a person has a very stark taiva to something. What's that process to be mevatel that taiva? Especially if the person's in that taiva for a long time. How do you move away from that taiva? So here, the moich shalta lev pashtos is a process of islabshus, and islabshus is not through chacham, it's through bina. Bina through das enters the middas. There's a conversation. I talk to my middas. I convince it. Hey, this is good stuff. But that's only when it's bechalishus. When the middas are biskabros, then we don't do islabshus. Then we do bittul, mulmailo. How does that bittul happen? Here, moich shalta lev has a different meaning. It's not bina, it's chachma. Or nachech, as we say, it's the shem havaya shebechachma. Here, it's a whole different word. What do we do here? What's the concept of moich? What's the concept of chachma? Chachma is re'iyah, right? We talked about this last Maamar. It's a long hemshech here, but this Maamar is mamash hemshech in a way to the previous Maamar. It's signed, right? It's signed to the previous Maamar. And in the beginning of Tziv Gimel, Pimish is parallel. Shachas meichem b'midas. Chachma is truth. Chachma is not a conversation. It's not conceptualizing. It's not deeply understanding something. Chachma is azay is their inyan. Azay is their inyan. Yeah, the Rebbe brought the Maisa. There's two different gersois. Sometimes the Rebbe brings it from the Poltaver of, or from Radatz. Yeah, I think from both. Different sichas. That what? As fact, Akasha, Amol, what's the answer? Azay is their inyan. So Pashas Azay is their inyan sounds like klap, cup, and vant, right? It's like, don't ask, like the old Russian way. Like, Azay is their inyan. No, Azay is their inyan is there's a pnimius here. Azay is their inyan is, there's a certain truth. When you see a certain truth, Nekudas HaChachma. Nekudas HaChachma. This is the way it is. Nekudas HaChachma is the bittul of Moich. It's not about my understanding, and it's not about how good I understand and how much I could explain it to you. It's the upleg, it's the anacha shebechachma, the upleg in cup, a certain emes, re'iyah. This is the pnimius of Yosef HaTzadik, coming from Vayeshev, Yosef HaTzadik, right? Yosef Peitifar. So what does he do? Ra Dukne Shel Aviv Bachaloy. A few discussed for brains. The begret wegen Dukne Shel Aviv is Chachma. Ria of Aviv, Ria de Chachma. Ra Dukne Shel Aviv. Let's say a time like that. At a time like that, he can't start explaining to himself a Maamar. Right? That's not the word. The nekuda the bittul of chachma, the pshittus of chachma. So here it's more about the detachment from the midas. It's not about being mislabish in the midas. It's nekudas hachachma. And noch tifer ad mordaf regain to shem havaya some mislabish bechachma, as the Haggai do in Tanya Shamati Periklam Hey Shamati Mimuri, that the Eirin Soiv is mislabish. He madregas hachachma. The Eirin Soiv, the Eirin Soiv shebechachma, shem havaya shebechachma. So the shem havaya shebechachma. When that's begilli, what does that do? What that does, it creates like sort of this general tresel. This tresel. There's a certain pshittis over there. And what that does is just like, chill out. It's like think, in a very practical. So let's say this kid is blowing a tantrum at home. And mommy is trying to explain to the kid that's an ish, and I'll give you a prize later, and at this moment nothing's happening. And then Tati walks in. We don't want to be magdir, the Tati figure, it's the mama, yeah. And she like comes and get that on shreit of him, yeah. Dark name, dark shalom, right? And just like on hand, the new way, yeah. And just creates a certain, or like what's going on, like head off, right? Sometimes it's just like sometimes you just have to tell a person stop. I was a kid in the classroom, yeah. I was in mechanchim and release time. So you have the kid that let's say you tell them some kids are just not shaykh, they're stickled us. So how do you shut them down? You just shut them down, right? You don't start being mislabish in them and explaining to them. There's no time for that. Right now they're going crazy. They're hyper. They're just coming from recess. Shvaik, hate done. Right? That discipline comes. It doesn't come from islabshus. It comes from reimus. It comes from certain pshittas. Obviously, it's a very big gasos inyan. Husa inyan is the kud of the bittul velikus, the bittul of chachma. Riyad the chachma. It's such in such a moment you're so low. So yeah, you need more islabshus mata. We say no, and that you see in this Maamar. The lower you go, the hecher you have to reach. You don't go in Islam because islabshus will only reach to a certain place. Let's say, the Bina Sprach only reaches midis the way they're bechalishas. A very nice, tame Nefesh Bahamis, you speak to him Bina. A stark Nefesh Bahamis, you have to speak to him Chachma. And then Nach Tifer, what about if it's almost out of the hands of Nefesh Bahamis? Why? Because the person already went through so many experiences that it's already part of their regular thought process. Yeah, it's a it says in the Maamar. Your midis already moved on. You might have now worked on your midis. You don't have that, let's say about Baal Tshuva, the Surei Ra, he has his Yetzer is still in a certain direction. No, his Yetzer was already moved. He's already in a much better place, a more spiritual place. But the Oisius are still there. The Oisius are floating in his mind and in his heart. They're around. They're there. So it's Nach Nidrike. So how do you reach that? Go Nach Hecher. Nach Hecher. What's Nach Hecher? Rusa de Liba. What's Rusa de Liba? We'll get there. But this already brings us into Basi Lagani. Yeah, Basi Lagani sprach. What's Basi Lagani? The whole Basi Lagani is based on the premise they need Shtus Diktusha. Why do they need Shtus Diktusha? What verse does it think? Shtus Diktusha? Moyach Shalt Aleh. What's Shtus Diktusha? What's this craziness? Everyone wants to go nuts. Avnovi Nikra Meshuga, Veisa Meshuga. Everyone wants to be Meshuga. What's happening here? So the way the free caps, but the Rebbe, Tavshin Yud Gimel especially, the Rebbe says it's very clear. It's based off the Rambam. The Rambam says, what's the derech in Hilchas Deis? Right after Hilchas Seder Torah is how to be a mensch, right? Or how to be a normal person. Hilchas Deis, what's the Rambam say? What's the derech? The regular derech is derech hamemutza, to be a beinani in Lashon Rambam. Derech hamtzoi. But that's all if a person is in a functional place. But what if a person went to the other katze, then you got to run away to the other katze, and then you could sort of get back to the middle. So in a time where there's shtos tiklipa, what's shtos tiklipa? It's a tut in yonav alazoi tut veld, right? When it's ready, it's not about rationalizing, and it's not about I have a certain etiya for it. It's just like this is the way it is. Like it just became part of my schedule, right? You have to eat at certain times, and you have to have certain narishkeit that the world does. So the way to deal with that, you can't rationalize, you can't converse with it because it's not a conversation. It's not midis, it's not moichin. It's a bit different, but it's the same, similar to this Maamar. This is, the oisius here, the oisius that are beyond midis are sort of like similar to shtos teklipa. It's oisius. It already left the world of moichin and midis. It just is. It became part of the facts of life. Like, this is who I am. I can't even explain it to you. I don't even want it. In other words, you could call it an addiction. Right? They have the famous Maamar in Ether. It also goes very similar here. Or is it Kisisa, I believe? Ether. Right? You already have. It's already makif the klipa. It's like there's no. It's not even something that I'm looking for. Something that I want. It's not moichin. It's not midis. It's just azilyadas. This is the way I am. Then you got to go to a whole different space. You have to go to shtus diktusha. To counter the shtus, the counter with shtus shlomayim tamadas. Okay.